Thank you. I'll try to make it short as much as I can. There is a story. There is a story between servant and God in the day of judgment. And God asked the servant, why did you commit this sin? And he says, Satan made me do it. And why did you commit that sin? And Satan made me do it. Why did you do that? Satan made me do it. At some point Satan says, come on, you did it all. You're blaming on me. And in today's world, we are seeing a lot of acts of Satan around the world, unfortunately. And unfortunately, a lot of them are blamed on religions. And one of the reasons why we gathered and organized this gathering is that to show, are you talking about violence and war? Here is what religions really think. Here is what the texts are thinking. Here is what the Quran says, what the Bible says, the Old Testament says, New Testament says, and I say Last Testament to the Quran, which comes from the same source. And therefore, just closing the door for the blame that they are using religion as their base of the violence people are using. That's one of the reasons. But while doing that, of course, we encounter a lot of, how can I say, counter voice. People are saying, you are telling that there is no violence and there is no justification in war on all religions, but what are you going to say about the verses in such and such verses in the Bible, talks about killing in Quran, and what are you going to say about that? The last program that we did over here was about that, and which was titled The Verses of Violence in Abrahamic Text. And at that point I told our audience a story. I would like to retell the story because I'm not a professor, so I'm just going to tell stories to you. That I'm going to retell you again. Once, it is widely said, a joke in my hometown, Turkey. There was a man who didn't pray at all. And when they asked him, why don't you pray? And he used to say, because the book of God, Quran says so. How come? He says, yeah, Quran says don't pray. And that's why I pray. But if you take a look at the context of it, in Arabic it says, La taqrabu salah, don't come close to prayer while you are drunk. Of course, he misses this part. So he said Quran says don't pray, but he misses while you're drunk part. So that's people who are using religious texts as their how can I say source of violence. Unfortunately, not really understanding the text really. And that's another point that I would like to underline. And then right now, trying to give you the Quranic perspective on the justification of war. Number of Quranic verses addresses the relationship between Muslims and their enemies, shall we call it that way, or those who fight with during both in Meccan and Medinian periods. For those who do not understand, a Meccan Medinian period is that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was revealed, his message was revealed in 610. And he lived through 622, that makes about 13 years, in Mecca. Then he migrated to Medina. That's what I mean by Meccan and Medinan period. The Meccan period, over 114 verses, commands Muslims to forgive their persecutors and be patient in the face of the religious oppression and execution of some of their fellows. In the Medinian period, however, certain verses give the Muslims permission to defend themselves in the face of aggression from the Meccans. In several of the Medinan chapters of the Quran, many verses addresses the Muslims struggle with their enemies, and some of the verses command Muslims to fight with the enemy, and we will talk about the conditions under what condition. The three words, for those who are interested and would like to make a research in Quran, three words with their derivations are used in the Quran in the context of war. Qital, that means fighting, murder, killing, and in different forms. Jihad, one form of it is sometimes used struggle, striving, war, and that's well, some of the meanings. And the other one is harb, which is the actual meaning of war. The Quranic, actually before that, I think I have to underline a couple of things. Quran talks about, talks to all humanity, Ya ayyuhan nas, to all humanity. And also the Old Testament, New Testament, if you open up, you will see that the whole text talks to all humanity. However, when it comes to categorization of faith, or categorizing people according to their faiths, there are 4 types of people according to Quran. Mu'min, that means a believer. Al-kafir, non-believer, or blasphemer. Ahl al-kitab, people of book, and widely and mostly understood as Christians and people from the Judaic tradition, Jews. And al-munafiqun, that means the hypocrites. There are 4 types of people. And among those who are the enemy of Islam, or who are the enemy of Muslim, is non-Muslims, the enemy of Muslims, and those has nothing to do. If we have to just pick an enemy, or if you have to say those are the enemies of Islam, the verses that I'm going to recite to you in a while will tell us only those who are fighting is your enemy, actively fighting. Doesn't matter if they are believer or non-believer, or from the people of book, or from the munafiqun, if they are not actively fighting in combat, they do not consider it as enemy. And even them, the animosity is not related to their, how can I say, not to their bodies as who they are, but the animosity is the thing that they have in their mind. Let me give you an example. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the greatest enemy of his time is considered as Abu Jahl during his time. He was maybe the greatest enemy in Mecca to him, and he did all the evil that he possibly could to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But it is revealed in the hadith, in the sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that he had visited or went to his door more than 100 times to give him the message of Islam. Why would I go to someone that I hate to take him to paradise with me? The hatred was not to Abu Jahl himself personally. The hatred was, if you have the hatred itself, which is within Abu Jahl. But we cannot be an enemy of a person. When I say those who are fighting with you, even if you are fighting, you cannot be an enemy to any human being. Keeping that in mind, the Quranic casus belli, is that the
cause of war, yes.
Cause of war. So
exactly.
This is the right. This is the terminology that are used by the jurisprudence. According to Islam, the whole judiciary system, it is important to understand. I have to build my couple of last sentences on these foundations. The whole judiciary system of Islam, or some people call it Sharia, so there is a big question mark, is it the same or not? So that's a big question mark. The whole judiciary system of Islam is built to protect 5 things. This is very important. Number one, religion. Number 2, life. Number 3, property. Number 4, our chastity, our wives, our daughters. And number 5, our intelligence or our mind. This is why alcohol and all these drug usage is forbidden, because it is to protect. So keeping this in mind, all judiciary system of Islam has been built around these 5 elements to protect these 5 elements. So the Quranic justifications for war can be examined in the following texts. First, chapter 2, verse 190 through 194. But before that, let me go to As a matter of fact, chapter 8, verse 38 and 39. This is the verse that has been believed to give a permission for a believer to fight against those who are oppressing them. And meaning, permission to engage in fighting is given to those against whom war is waged because they have been wronged. Verily, God is able to give them victory. Those who have been expelled from their homes unjustly and only for saying, God is our Lord. And number 40, had not God permitted people to defend themselves against the aggression of others, monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques, wherein the name of God is oft mentioned, would be pulled down. Certainly, God will support those who support him. Indeed, God is all strong and all almighty. It is clear from these verses, from history, that Islam resorts to force only to defend itself and establish freedom of belief under Muslim rule. Under Muslim rule, Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, Hindus, and adherents of other religions are free to practice their religion. And I'm talking about according to Islam. Even many Western historians and writers have agreed that the Christians and Jews have experienced this throughout the history under many Muslim rulers. This text explains that the Islamic casus belli is defense against aggression. It adds that Muslims were expelled from their homes unjustly, only because of their belief in God. That is to say that Islamic casus belli here is a defense of human rights. In other words, this verse supports the protection of religious freedom in general, since protection of monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques is given as a justification for defensive war. However, there is a couple of important things that I have to underline, and I'm going to quote from Mr. Fethullah Gülen, who is our honorary president. However, he says, there is an important point to mention. In order to use force, there must be an Islamic state. It has to be a government. I cannot, as a person, decide myself and justify in my mind something and go ahead and bomb somewhere or kill somebody. If I do that, this is terrorism. Or a group of people cannot justify in their hearts and minds something and pick something, a verse from God, from Quran, and says this is how God ordered, and they cannot just do whatever they said. This is called terror. It must be an Islamic state. It was allowed only after the Prophet immigrated to Medina, meaning after Islam becomes a government. A state. And established an independent state for Muslims have been wronged. So I think I'm almost out of time. There are a lot of verses that I was maybe, if there are questions that I can maybe cover during the question period. Let me summarize. As a summary, if there is a just war, like you have pointed out, and again, especially with the weapons that we have in 21st century, I don't know if we could have any just war, because when you send a bomb, unfortunately, it will collaterally, whatever you call collateral damage, children and women, and it is clearly stated in the sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, you cannot, and also in the Quran, you cannot basically kill the innocent people. Maybe soldiers themselves you can consider innocent people, but let's say they're actively in combat. With the weapons that we have, the mass destruction weapons, the horrible weapons that we have, I don't know if there is any justification of war. But if there is, let me just summarize. One, just to protect ourselves from the aggressions, again, with the permission of the state, not personal, not a people of group. To protect ourselves from outside aggression. Our what? Our religion. To protect our religion, to protect our lives, to protect our property, to protect our chastities, our wives, our daughters, and to protect our mind if somebody is pushing us to become all alcoholics or just trying to sell the whole nation a heroin, for example. It is destroying of mind. This is a reason. Or for international security. And sometimes there are verses that I just skipped that talks about, aren't you going to fight for those who are asking for help, like women, children, and they are really oppressed, and they don't have anyone. And it is, as a matter of fact, a threat for the whole nation or whole world, for the sake of international security. Again, with the decision of state, or freedom of religion. What do we say? What do we mean by freedom of religion? When we talk about freedom of religion, we talk about three things. People has to have a right to believe in any faith, any religion they choose to. That's one. Second, people must have a freedom to practice any belief they have. And thirdly, people should have a freedom of vocalizing their belief, to be able to speak openly and share it with others. And if you have a problem in one of these three, there is a problem. Could be. It has been used in the past as a reasoning for war. I hope that was helpful. There were a lot of things that I was hoping to cover and couldn't, unfortunately. Maybe it will come up in the question and answer session. Thank you very much.